and welcome to the North Carolina Museum of History and the 25th Annual American Indian Heritage Celebration. Our presenter, Senora Lynch, will begin in just a moment, but we want to begin with a few notes. Remember to ask questions in the chat, and we'll do our best to respond to them and share with our presenter. We have many additional resources about AI in North Carolina on our website, nc-aihc.com. We would like to thank the following sponsors of the North Carolina Museum of History Foundation for helping to make this event possible. All right, let's get started. Welcome, Senora. What are you going to show us today?
Oh, my name is Senora Lynch, and I'm from the Haliwa-Saponi tribe in Hollister in Warren County, North Carolina. We are one of the third largest tribes in the state amongst 8 other tribes that are here. The word Haliwa is for the counties in which we live, which is Halifax and Warren County. And the word Saponi means people from the red clay. So we are excited about being here today to share our history, our culture, to teach you guys about our art and the different things that we do in our tribal community. We're so happy that here in the Museum of History that we can share all the different things about our people, and that, you know, our history is coming around and more teachers are teaching good things about our different tribal communities, and they're excited about learning and they want to learn more and more. And so the Museum of History has certainly opened the door and allowed us to have a space of sharing and teaching and changing the mindsets of America. You know, oftentimes the history books don't really tell the truth. So we're happy that we can be here to tell our own stories. The history sometimes tells us that all the Indians left and went on the Trail of Tears with the Cherokee Indians up in Oklahoma. But, you know, we know our people, we survived, and we hid into the woods, and we settled in what's called the meadow areas. And so our people were able to survive and grow and continue our history and our culture for years. We were taught that we were actually whipped and beaten for speaking our language. And so now we're happy that my elders and many of our other elders of North Carolina held on to all the things that we have. And we held on to our tribe, our meetings, our gatherings, our ways of life. And so we're so happy that you're here with us today and that you're willing, you're open mind to learn about other things. One of my favorite things to do is go into the schools and teach and talk about our art. I remember one of the funny things one of the kids asked me not too long ago, actually. He asked me, did I ride my horse there? He said, did you ride your horse here? I said, yep, I rode my black shiny Mustang. Of course, you know, he had no idea what that meant. But at the time I had an old black truck, and he thought it was the greatest thing in the world. But it just goes to show how we still have a job to do. We still have some education that we can share and offer our knowledge to the next generations to come. So I am an artist. I didn't really know I was an artist growing up. In our tribe, these are just some of the things that we did growing up. So we made pottery and baskets, beadwork and carvings and sculptures and things like that. Never really calling myself an artist. But as I continue to grow in the art that I've been taught, which is pottery, people started, you know, calling me an artist. And then later on, people would say, oh, wow, you have quite an art career. And so now I make my work. I've taken my culture, my tradition, and turn it into my job. And so now I actually make my pottery and I sell my pottery. Of course, I'm a little old school, so I have to get used to the modern technology and putting it online and getting on Facebook and all these things that everybody's used to today. So we've always operated off a word of mouth. You know, oh, did you hear about that girl? She makes pottery. She's from Hollister. So we've always operated off a word of mouth. But today, we're going to get a little bit hip in modern technology, just like we're doing right now, to share our art through the cameras so that you can still celebrate Indian Heritage Month along with us while we're here at the museum. So this is a great opportunity for everybody. So before I start talking about my pottery, I'm going to tell you a little bit about some other things that I brought with me today. And one of them is this. This is a jewelry box. And this was made by my grandfather. And it's very old. It's I know it's older than I am. I'm not quite that old, but it's an old piece of work that he made, and it's a jewelry box made out of sweet gum balls. You know, you see these sweet gum balls laying on the ground. Don't really know what to do with them, but he took them and made it into art form. And so this is the top, and I treasure this box. I have some things that are on the inside that are important to me. I always keep those personal items inside this jewelry box. But it's made out of sweet gum balls. But our people also would chew the sweet gum. So it was the first chewing gum, like the chewing gum you have today. It actually came from the different tree saps. This is another piece of his art. And this is a belt that's made out of walnuts. And so he would take the walnuts and slice them and then create them into art. So it's pretty cool. And having his work with me today is like having a part of his spirit that's with me. My very first art that I learned to make actually was from him. He was a weaver, so he would weave chair bottoms and baskets out of white oak splints. And so when I was a little girl, my mother would tell me to go over there and sit with my grandfather and help him do his chairs. And so he began to teach me how to weave, how to cut splints from the white oak tree, how to gather our elm bark. And he would also use river cane and weave the bottom of his chairs. And so that was my very first art that really, I think, set the idea of me doing art. He would look at me and say, wow, you're so strong. You have good hands. And you're really good at this stuff. So you should keep doing this. And so I think that was part of my inspiration on keeping my art. And also, I remember when I was a little girl, I went to his shop and he had these old broken pottery shards. And when he would show me those broken pottery shards, he would tell me that this is the way our people made pottery. And so he said they would take the corn cob and actually roll onto the clay and make the different textures. And so he would also show me some rope designs and different designs that were on the clay. So I think that was part of my inspiration on first feeling the spirit of the clay. When he was telling me about it, I had no idea at that time that I would actually be making pottery. This is another piece of our art that we make. These are I designed, and my cousin Brenda, she helped me be these. She's also an artist here, Brenda Silver, and we made these together. But these are my husband's moccasins, and he wears them in our ceremonies. He wears them at our powwow grounds, and he wears them during our special celebrations that we have in our tribal community. And this is also a pouch that my daughter carries when she's dancing in the powwow. And we always keep a little bit of tobacco on the inside to help us with our prayers and our protection, that we always keep a little bit of that tobacco with us. So this is one of the pouches that she wears when she's dancing. This one right here is a piece of art that one of my students made, Yushika. And he made this, and I got this from him. And he's a very, very good beater now. So it's good to know that our generation of our children are going to continue, and they're going to continue our art form and pass it on. And hopefully he'll teach his children, and so on and so on. So we'll never lose this gift of making art. Now, I started making pottery when I was about 14 years old, and we were reviving our pottery. And so years ago, our people always made pottery. Historically, if you look at some of the old pottery shards and broken pieces of artifacts here in North Carolina, you will find them all across North Carolina, from east to west, north to south. So that tells you that the land that you live on was historically American Indian land. And so we started reviving our pottery in the 70s. And so I was one of those students they asked to come help carry clay and carry water. And by being a helper to our elders, they began to teach me how to mold and shape the clay. So what I found interesting is when we were reviving our pottery in the 70s, as the elders were speaking, they would talk about how they would go get clay and make little bowls when they were children. So even though we're reviving it for the generations to come, it was never really lost. So sometimes we say it went to sleep for a little while. And so the spirit's awake inside of us. And one of our elders said one time, you know, they came in and they cut down all the trees. He said, but you know what? You're making pottery. He's doing baskets. They're out there dancing. Our songs are reviving. He said they cut down the trees, but they didn't take away the roots. He said, as long as we have the roots of the trees, we're going to blossom and grow. And so I thought that was a really wise thing that he said, because he knew, you know, a lot of our history had been cut down, but the roots were still there. And so as I began to take the pottery classes, our elders began to talk about different things that were part of our tribe and our culture. And so I found myself taking the traditional ways and beliefs and putting those ideas and designs into my pottery. And so what I do is I tell stories through the clay. And sometimes I'm at night and I dream. And sometimes it's funny because one night I was dreaming about pottery and I began to blow on the clay. And my husband said, what are you doing? He said, I said, I'm making a piece of pottery. He said, but we're asleep. Aren't you asleep? I said, no, I guess I was making a piece of pottery. So a lot of times at night when I'm sleeping, I'll dream about designs, and I'll dream about ideas and how I should put them onto the clay. And we have a lot of old sayings and beliefs of the animals and the trees. And what I've done is I've taken those tribal beliefs and began to carve it into my pottery. And so when you see my pottery, you'll see how our history and our tradition is reflected through my designs and through our art. And you'll find this from nation to nation, from tribe to tribe. The stories lie inside the pottery. You know, sometimes I'll say, so one of my favorite things to ask is, do you think American Indian were scientists? And you know, when you think about art and clay and trees and knowing the signs of the seasons, following the moon, our people were scientists way back then. You know, they were going through a trial and error, just like scientists. They ask questions, they explore, they're curious, they're interested. And so they want to know how, what, why, what was this made out of? And so our people were scientists way before the colonists came here. We were already surviving and living with Mother Earth, and she was already teaching us our ways. And so knowing, just like the sweet gum balls, knowing when that sap was going to come and to make that into chewing gum. But not only was it chewing gum, it was also medicine. So it was medicine for the body. And so all of this is part of Native Americans being scientists. Just a thought. So I wanted to show you this piece first. This is one of my older pieces of pottery. Not my oldest, because I started when I was 14, but when I made my first few pieces of pottery, they all broke. So I didn't get to actually keep any of my very first pieces. And then also too, early on is I gave away all of my pottery. So initially when we're taught a gift, and we call this a gift and a skill as well, but we're also taught that we have to share it, we have to give it away. So I gave away all of my pottery. And so this is one, I think when I was coming back to making pottery, I walked away from it for a little while, and then I got back into it. And so this is one of my first pieces that I made, and this is a historical replica of a face pot. And so as you see, this is made with the white clay, and then it's painted with the red clay on top. And on the bottom of it, it has my signature. And my signature says Wiko Core, which is my Indian name. It means water flowing gently over rocks. It also has an oak leaf, and it has a date, which is 1992. So this one tells me when I made this piece. And this was also one of my very first pieces that I won art competition. So I take my work and put it into different art competitions, and I compete against other artists. But this was one of my first pieces that I made. And when I carved my name into the bottom, I said, this is how I'm going to make my pottery. Because historically, our people would actually paint a clay on clay, but you wouldn't have found it carved in quite like this. And you certainly wouldn't have found it as elaborate as my pottery is today. So my pottery is both traditional and contemporary. So it's modern and old. And my technique of making pottery is hand coiling. So I use the old technique of making pottery, but the way I stylize my designs on top brings it into the modern world. So we always say we walk in two worlds. We walk on Mother Earth and we walk on concrete. So that one is one of my old pieces of pottery. I actually call that one my boyfriend. So he's going to stay around with me for a while. This is also another piece of my pottery. And this one is a bear. And he's called my brother's spirit. And my mother would always teach us that we have to take care of each other. And so the bear represents my brother's spirit because his brothers are on his back. So it has turtles, birds, deers, wolves, bears, all these other animals are on the back of the bear. And so he's the peacekeeper. And so our people would say that years ago, our people could talk to the animals, and that the bear was one of those animals who told them which medicine plants to gather. And so by following the bear into the woods, our people began to learn which one of these medicine plants we needed for ourselves. And he's strong. So he represents peace and also strength. But because the bear is so strong, he's carrying the people on his back. Right here is a plant called bear grass. And I put that on all four of his feet. I've become to do this on all of my bears because the bear grass is a very strong plant. And our people make rope out of the stalk of the bear grass. And the leaves themselves, they would actually snatch the leaves off and make it into a string to hang their meat in the pack houses. So the bear grass is a very, very strong plant. It also has different flowers. It has berries, it has birds. And this one is sculptured out of one big chunk of clay. So I took a great big chunk of clay and started dividing the legs into fours. I pulled out the head, and then I made the ears. And then I started carving it. So some people say it looks like wood. And I agree, it does kind of look like wood. I have created my own style on how I carve in the background. So I'll carve lines in the background and makes the clay actually look like it's wood. But it's really red clay. So it's red clay, and then the clay on top is a white clay. This one right here, this one is called Bearing Gifts. And this is a mother turtle, and she's sharing the gifts of knowledge with her children. And so as mothers, we want to pass a lot of good things to our kids. So we want to teach them many things in life. And so this is the mother turtle, and she bears the gift of prayer. But on these little trinkets, it has a bird, which is the gift of good words, that we could sing a song or say something to our elders, that we could speak good words and say something kind to each other. You know, our mouths are very powerful. And so we can use them for good, and we can just pat somebody on their back and make them feel good, you know, just through our words. This one also has wampum, which represents charity. That we can always help somebody out. We can always give. If somebody needs money or food, we can give to them. And wampum was actually the very first, some people refer to it as money, but it was very first trade item. So from tribe to tribe, we would actually trade wampum beads, which is a seashell made from the quahog shell. And so we would trade wampum for other goods such as hides, skins, seeds, trees, plants. We would trade from tribe to tribe. And then when the colonists came over here, we actually started trading glass beads. And so you'll see some glass beads on our artwork as well. But the very first beads were made out of seashell. Some were made out of nuts. Some were made out of different types of wood and animal bones, teeth. So, but wampum was one of those very, very special ornaments that was made into beads. It also has a circle, which represents unity, that we can work together. I put a cross on here to represent religion, that we could share our beliefs, but we can also share our differences. I was brought up with Native culture and also Christianity. It has a arrowhead, which is for protection, that we can protect and look after each other. It has a heart, which is for love, that we can love each other. And then it has a flower, which is the medicine plant, so we can heal each other. And we all have that gift of healing just from our touch, our hugs. You know, sometimes you hug somebody and they'll say, "Oh, that feels so much better." And it's true. You know, true. We can heal with our own touch, or even with the medicine plants from the earth. So this one's called Bearing Gifts. This one right here is a wolf design. And this one is a symbol of the two families. So this is the wolf singing together, and they're singing to the moon. And so as they sing to the moon, they represent our family. These are the little wolf pups, symbolizing our descendants, our elders who have gone before us. And it has the moon and the stars. And the wolf is an interesting character. He teaches us to communicate and to look after each other, because the wolf always keeps his family in a pack. See, so he keeps his people together, but they're always singing and hunting together. So they stay together. So this is called the Wolf Clan. He's also like a little gossiper too, because you know, sometimes we say we don't want to be gossipers, right? But you know, there's those people who are always carrying the news. And if it wasn't for the gossipers, sometimes we wouldn't hear what's happening in the community. So we know that the wolf is very important within our clan system. This one is a turtle. And this one's a little different because this one is white clay with red clay on top. But I added iron oxide into the clay and it makes it turn black. So it's the same type of pottery that I make with the red and white clay, but it made the clay turn black when it was in the firing process. Here's another one. This one came to me in a dream. So one night when I was sleeping, I saw these deers. They just kept running and running around, and the swirl began to grow. And so the Creator let me know that this is the spirit line. And when we take a part of the deer, we take a part of his spirit. And so I did this in honor of our men. It has the bow and the arrow and the tracks. Because if you're going to be a good hunter, then you need to know how to find the deer. And so it means he's going to be a good provider for his family. And so that teaches you how I come up with my ideas and my designs, because we use the deer for clothing, for food, for tools, for rope, for musical instruments to adore our regalias with. We make bones and knives and awls out of the antlers. And my grandfather, he would actually make a glue out of the deer antlers. So he would take the tip of the deer antler and chop it up and boil it and make it into a glue. And it makes a really, really strong glue. So we still hunt today. We still eat the deer. We still make clothing out of the hides. We still make musical instruments out of the hoofs. We make bone knives out of the leg bones. We make what's called a peshaw, or a headdress. The men wear on their heads is called a peshaw. And it's made out of the deer's tail. And so we still use all of the parts. Even the brain of the deer is used to condition the hides. And so that's smoked into the skin. It makes the skin really strong, and it helps it to be waterproof. And so it's really nice to know, you know, we still continue this tradition today. And if you ever go to a Native American powwow, you'll see a lot of the women, they'll be dressed out in a buckskin, which comes from the deer's hide, from his skin. This one is a big pot, very big pot. And this one is, it's all hand coiled. So the inside is pretty big. And this one is made with about 20 coils going all the way up. So I don't throw in the wheels like a lot of potters do. I hand coil and hand build all of my work. And so this one is made with red and white clay also. And all of my work, I create designs based on the 4 directions. So I always take my visual eye and see the 4 directions, and I go from there to create my designs on my pottery. So this one is called the gift, and this one has the gift of corn, the gift of tobacco, the gift of the turtle, the gift of the dogwood flower, and this right here comes from the beaver's tail. And wherever the beaver's at, it means that there's lots of fish. And so these are the signs that we use to teach us in life how to continue to live. And so as soon as the dogwood flower blooms, it tells us that the earth is getting ready for you to till the land. And so the earth is warming up from the winter moon. And now the spring moon is coming. And when the dogwood flower comes, it lets us know that that's a sign to start beginning to prepare the land to plant the corn and to also plant the tobacco. Now, in North Carolina, the tobacco and corn was the first gift that the natives shared with the colonists. And so we taught them how to plant the corn, how to plant the tobacco. And, they also wanted gold from our land. And so sometimes I think, that gold was that golden corn and that golden tobacco was just as important as literally the stone of gold. But this one is called the gift, and this is in honor of preparing for that future, for that gift of corn and tobacco. And that's a bowl that I actually, one of my bigger bowls. Is a lot of work to make these bigger bowls in the coiling technique. I know a lot of people are familiar with people who do pottery on a wheel. That technique is much faster than this way, but this is the way that I was taught, so this is the way I continue to make my pottery. A lot of people can't believe that it's actually been coiled because of the shape of it. Here's another one. This one is a sculpture of a corn woman. And you notice that corn is on a lot of my pottery as well. We call it the staff of life. It's been our tool for survival forever. The woman is considered the one who carries the seed of our children. So she's the mother. So this is the corn maiden. So she's the mother. She protects us. She feeds us. She grows the crops. She teaches us which way and how we should put our corn into the ground. And our people always believed in putting 3 seeds in one hole because corn cannot grow without company. So we know our survival way is to stay together. So that company of each other goes further than just the seeds. But it really won't grow if you only have 1 seed in there. You have to have three or more seeds on a hole for your corn to grow. But she's also wearing a purple wampum necklace, just like I talked about earlier, the quahog shell. So this, for me, when I put the necklace on the woman, is to represent her beauty, because she's not just a hard worker, but she's also very beautiful. So I put that on there to symbolize who she is as a woman. So later on, when I come back, I'm going to be actually demonstrating some pottery with my hands. And so I'll pull out my red clay, and we won't get to the white clay today, but I'll certainly continue to talk about my designs and what they represent. I'm very thankful here at the museum that we can continue our culture, our history. Come visit our tribal communities. We have our big powwow in April. We hope we have it this April. It's always the 3rd week in April. It's a big event. We have over 15,000 people that come, and we have beautiful dancers and singers who come out and bring their drums, and we're reviving our language. So a lot of our men now are singing our songs in our language, and our women are in the background singing along with them. So we want to just tell you thank you for having us today, and hopefully if anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Senora. Yeah, we've got a couple questions for you. The first one is, do you carve your pieces first and then paint them white?
Okay, that's a good question. I build all of my pottery first with the red clay, and then after they're dry, almost dry, I paint the white clay on top, and then I'll let that sit for a day or two because the clay has to stick to each other. And then after that, I begin to carve the designs. So I freehand etch my designs. I don't use any stencils or anything like that. I just start thinking it through and create it onto my art. Now, sometimes I have a thought in mind that what design I'm going to put on a piece of pottery. And then before I finish the pot, the whole idea could change. So I sort of let the clay talk to me and tell me what shape it wants. Sometimes I'm not even in control. I'll think of one shape, and then the clay just moves in its own way because they're all hand pushed out by hand, and it all just kind of depends on which way the clay wants to move will determine the final shape. But the clay is painted on top and then carved inside.
We have time for one more question. What is a spirit line? You mentioned it speaking of the deer pot.
Oh, okay. Cool question. Never been asked that one before. I like that. The spirit line is our spirit within. So the swirl is historically on some of the old pots, you'll find a swirl design, and it represents the spirit of the wind, the spirit of the water, the spirit of life. And so the spirit line represents that spirit, that free spirit within. And so when we take that deer's life, his spirit now becomes a part of our spirit because now we've taken not only his life, but we've taken his meat too. And we always give thanks too. We still do that today. We offer a blessing of prayer when we take the life of an animal.
Thank you so much, Senora. This has been awesome. Thank you to all those of you who joined us. As Senora said, she'll be back in the next session, and there are many other events to join and watch as well today and tomorrow. Go to the schedule at nc-aihc.com.
Okay, thank you. Happy Indian Heritage Month.